welcome back to Sundays in the Garden. I've got a fair few new followers here that have joined after my trip to Barnsdale last week, so if you're here from that, then welcome, and I'll be visiting Barnsdale again in the next 4 to 6 weeks, so look out for that video. Make sure you hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I post that one. If you're new here, my name's Sarah, and on my channel I share everything I get up to in my English cottage garden and allotment area in the UK. In today's video, I'm going to share with you the dahlias I've chosen for this year and how I go about planting them in containers. I started my dahlias last year in pots. They did absolutely brilliantly. Once the dahlias had finished, I lifted them from the pots and I stored them in my garage because it's a cool and dark place. I stored them in some sawdust to keep them dry as well, and I am now going to bring them out. Here they are, and see how they have fared over the winter. Before I do that, I'll just say that I didn't store them fantastically first time. So I lifted them, dried them, tipped them upside down so the water could drain out of the stems, and then I popped them to one side in my greenhouse and left them for a bit longer than I probably should have. So one set of tubers started to go a bit mouldy and not great looking. So I quickly grabbed all of the rest of them and then stored them in this way in the sawdust in my garage. So I lost one of my 4 dahlias at that time, the dahlia tuber sets, and had to get rid of it, but the other 3 seemed to be okay. I've kept checking them periodically to see how they're doing, and they've seemed to fare okay over the winter. So now I'm going to lift them out and just check how they're looking now. So the first one is a yellow 1.2 metre dahlia that I had last year. I can't remember the variety, but it's probably very similar to one I've got for next year, which was Golden Emblem. So it may well have been a Golden Emblem. I'm going to make sure I keep a note of all the names for my new ones that I've got this year. Now, feeling some of these, some of them feel a bit squishy, some of them feel absolutely fine. So I think with this one, I'm just going to have to plant it, pot it up and see how it does. If it doesn't seem to do very well, then we'll know that it didn't fare very well over winter, but it doesn't seem completely a lost cause. So we'll see how that one goes. I'll put that one up in a minute. This one feels absolutely brilliant. This one was another 1.2 metre one, and it was one of the ball variety, the circular, tight circular variety ones in a pale pink colour. This one did really well. It put on a lot of growth and it's looking pretty good. There's one tuber here that looks a bit funny, so I'll probably remove that one and then pot up the rest. And this was the Bora Bora variety. And again, this one feels pretty good. The tubers feel firm, no sign of rot. There's one that looks a little bit dodgy. I think it's okay, to be honest. So again, I'm going to pop this up as it is. If you've got a really large clump like potentially this one here, which has got quite a lot of tubers on it, you can divide them, wait to see where the eyes are coming from, which are like the little new shoots that appear, and then you can break them in half and create 2 plants from the one set of tubers. However, because this one is the biggest one but it is feeling a bit squishy in places, I am not going to do that this time because I'm not sure how it's going to fare, but we'll see. But that is something for next year that I may well do. So we've got 3 that I think are reasonably okay. They've stored well, and I'm going to pop them up in a minute. Oh, aha, 1 second. If I can show you. You see here, that's a little eye appearing, which is like a little new shoot, a little new growth appearing from the bottom. So that's where this year's flowers will grow from, the new stem. So that one is definitely doing okay. I wonder if any others have got any signs of life on them. This is the one I'm a bit worried about. They haven't got any signs of life yet. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be okay. Because many of them are yet still fairly dormant. They have been tucked up in the dark. So yes, I can't see any signs of life on that one yet. Then the same for this one. Oh, I lie. Okay, so actually, I don't know if we can show down here. Just here, this tiny little one, and there is another one somewhere. I'm not sure if I can show you, but there's 2 little shoots here, so that one's definitely showing some signs of life, so that's great. That's my pink one. So the Bora Bora has got a shoot and the pink one has a shoot, but I can't, this is the one I am more concerned about, how it's fared, and as yet I cannot see any shoots on this one, so it may be that we don't get any from this one, but I'm not going to not pot it up I'm still going to pot it up and see what happens, because you just never know. Then this year, my new varieties are, I thought I had to get a cafe au lait because everyone who grows dahlias really raves about these ones. They're really beautiful, a really large variety, get up to 100 centimeters in height, so quite a large plant, and the size of the actual flower itself is a sort of dinner plate size, 22 centimeters, so really lovely. So I wanted to add this to my collection. This one is Taylor's, and I think I picked it up, where did I pick this one up? At a local plant nursery near me, because they had some great offers on these. So yes, Taylor's. These three from last year were all from B&Q, on like a deal, I think 3 for a certain price. So yes, they all came from B&Q last year. All did really well. This one is from a local plant nursery, Cafe au Lait, but you can pick it up in a variety of places. Then I've got 2 of these variety, which are the Nordvik's Glory. And this one says it reaches 90 centimeters, so not quite as tall, but I love the color of this one, kind of the orangey color. Makes me think it's like a very autumnal color, and because they grow in the autumn, I think this will look beautiful in the garden at that time of year with the other autumn colors appearing. And I've got 2 of them, so I bought 2 of them so that I can put one out at the front of my property and one in a pot at the back. Now, last year, all of mine were grown in pots, and I'm going to grow the majority of them in pots again this year. But I'm going to try 2 or 3 plants directly. I'm going to start them off in pots to wake them up, and then take them and put them directly in the soil at the front of my house, because I've got an area where there's nothing really growing at the moment. So I'm going to try 3 different dahlia plants, and then I'm going to try and leave them in the ground, not lift them, and mulch them. So it's kind of an experiment between the pot ones and the ones that I leave in the ground. But we now know that the ones that are in pots that are lifted and stored over winter can survive well, because I've got 2 here that are definitely showing signs of life, even if the other one isn't looking so great. But this one is one of the ones I'm going to put out at the front of my property in the ground. But I have 2 of them, so one is going into a pot in the back garden and one is going to go into the ground. And actually it'll be really interesting to see the difference in them and how they fare. The tubers look a similar size. Another one that I think I'm going to grow at the front of my property is this one, which is called Golden Emblem, which I think I already have another one of here from last year. So the Golden Emblem from last year is going into a container and staying in the back of the garden. The reason that I'm growing most of mine in containers at the back is because we haven't got an awful lot of sunny position. We have a lot of sun on the allotment area, which is where the veg and stuff grows, but most of the rest of the garden is in shade because we've got a lot of beautiful surrounding trees. So I'm growing most of them in pots. All of the ones that are in bags like this, the Verve ones, are from B&Q. I've also got this one, which is a Sandra 90 centimeter variety in this pink colour. And a Seattle. I love this one because of the patterning on the leaves. We've got the 2 different shades, the white and the yellow being my favourite colour. I just think that's a really pretty shade. And that one's called Seattle. Both of them 90 centimetres, and they were in a deal 3 for £8. That's really good. When I was picking up the packets to select my tubers, I kind of looked in at all of the packets. There was obviously several of this variety available. So I was going around just seeing which ones had the most hefty, sort of started off tubers that looked pretty good. So I was going around picking them all up, checking which ones had a fair amount of growth on the tubers. And in this pack, actually, it felt really substantial, the amount I was getting, compared to, say, let's have a look at this one here. You can see the difference potentially in there. I've got a very small amount in this Cafe au Lait Taylor's one. They're very tiny, and quite a large tubers in here. And actually it looks like there might even be 2 sets of tubers, so I might be getting 2 plants for the price of one. We'll have to see. Having said that, last year all of these 3 that I've started off all started life being very small like these ones, and they have grown substantially over this year and done really well. So I don't think it necessarily matters how large they are to start off with. It's just how well they do in that year and how well you can then store them to keep them going if you're going to plant them in containers. To recap, we have the Golden Emblem from last year, which I'm not sure how it's going to do. It's not feeling fantastic. I can't see any signs of life yet, but I'm going to plant it and see how it does. We have the Pink Ball variety, which looks like it's doing great and has some eyes on it, so that one's looking like it's going to be fine. That's going in a container in the back garden. We have the Orange and Red Bora Bora variety, which is showing signs of life and is going in a container in the back garden. We have this dinner plate Seattle variety, which is going to be going in a container in the back garden. We have the Cafe au lait, which is going in a container in the back garden. We have a golden emblem, which is going to be going in the ground directly in the front garden. We have this Sandra pink variety, which I think there may be two different blocks of tubers in here. So I think one lot can go in the garden at the back and one lot can go in the front garden. And then we have two of these lovely Nordvik Glories orange variety, which I'm going to put one in a container in the back and one in the ground in the front. So how do we pot up the dahlias when we want to wake them up? Last year, I think I put them directly into a large pot. They went directly into the pot that I was going to continue to grow them in, and they woke up in there and they stayed in there and flowered in there for the whole season. However, this year I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is take smaller pots that are about, let me have a look at this one. You're going to fit in there, not quite. Let's see who will fit in there. Yes, this one will fit in there. Okay, so a pot like sort of this size, I think this is maybe a 15 centimetre, 20 centimetre pot. But essentially, you need to find one that is just a little bit bigger than the tubers. If it's too tight, you'll be breaking them off. If it's too large, then they could have the chance of rotting in the pots and becoming waterlogged, because at this stage they haven't got huge amounts of roots, so they aren't going to be sucking up loads and loads of water. So these are susceptible to rot, as we've seen with the one here that's looking a bit worse for wear after winter. So you don't want them to get too wet. So a pot of about this size, where they're just slightly sitting fairly snugly in there and haven't got too much room to move, is going to be the perfect size for them, so that they don't get waterlogged but they don't get broken or damaged. All I'm going to do with this is I'm going to pop it in some compost that has some grit mixed in, so that it again has good drainage. So I'm going to mix some compost and grit mix, pot it all up, and then leave it in the greenhouse and wait for it to start to spring into life. Once the growth has started, for the ones that are going into containers, I'll wait for them to get a bit larger and move them into the containers that I am going to continue to grow them on in. And for the ones that are going directly outside, I will wait for the risk of frost to pass and then pop them into the front garden directly into the ground. So we've got in here grit and compost, and I've put the grit in there to help with drainage, because these guys are susceptible to getting rotten in the soil, which we don't want to happen. So I'm going to pop this one in here, and then I'm going to cover it. You can actually cut these stems from last year off, but I'm going to leave them for now, and cut them off a little bit later perhaps, or just leave them as like an early support for the new plant. So now I'm going to cover it up so the tubers are fully covered, and then give them a tiny bit of water, but we're not going to over love on them, because that could cause them to rot, and leave them and see how they do and wait for the first shoots to begin emerging. So they're now covered, and I'm going to leave them in here and wait for them to start growing. It's really important, I've left the label on in here of the variety, so because they're so different, such different colours and such different heights, it's really important to make sure you label them so that you know what you're growing, so you can plant them in the correct position where you wanted them. So I am going to label all these up, and I'm also going to make a note as to whether it was going to go into a container or into the front of my house. And really looking forward to seeing these this year, because they are absolutely beautiful. I have grown to love dahlias like lots of gardeners have, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them. With dahlias, it adds that bit of excitement in the garden, because as the seasons start to tick on and we get into autumn and lots of the growth in the garden is starting to die back, we've got the dahlias to look forward to and enjoy right into autumn.
I really hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so you can see these dahlias come to life in the garden this year and watch the garden grow and develop in 2024. Thank you so much for watching, and have a brilliant week.